Hi, I'm Toro, and this is The World in Series. Each episode in this series is a quiet journey through time, softly exploring the people, places, and events that shaped a single year in our shared history. So get comfortable, let your thoughts wander, and let's drift back to the world as it was. The World in 1919. Welcome, dear listener. This is Toro, and tonight I invite you to drift with me into the quiet currents of history. Together, we will close our eyes and let the gentle tide of memory carry us back to the year 1919. The world had just crossed the threshold of a great storm. The First World War had ended only months earlier, and now humanity stood in the soft but uncertain dawn of peace. The air held both relief and weariness like the deep exhale after a long night. In 1919, cities bustled with change, streets hummed with the sound of new inventions, and shop windows gleamed with fashions and novelties that whispered of the modern age. Yet at the same time, families were mending, communities were healing, and nations were reshaping themselves after hardship. So, let us gently step into this moment, the year when the world paused to catch its breath, and when life, in its many forms, began to bloom again. World events. The year 1919 unfolded like a slow sunrise after a storm. The cannons of war had gone quiet, but their echoes still lingered across Europe and beyond. Leaders gathered in Paris for the Peace Conference, a series of meetings meant to chart a new map of the world. In grand halls filled with papers and pens, treaties were drafted, the most famous being the Treaty of Versailles, signed in June. It officially ended the war between Germany and the Allies, setting new borders and laying down reparations. The atmosphere was cautious, like people tiptoeing through fragile ground. Elsewhere, voices for self-determination grew louder. In India, peaceful demonstrations called for greater independence from Britain, led by the soft but steady presence of Mahatma Gandhi. In Korea, crowds gathered in March to declare their longing for freedom from Japanese rule. Though many movements were met with resistance, they reflected a world yearning for new beginnings. In the United States, President Woodrow Wilson championed the idea of a League of Nations, a hopeful vision of countries working together to prevent future wars. Though the League was founded in 1919, the US itself never joined, caught between dreams of unity and the pull of isolation. Meanwhile, in Russia, the tides of revolution still swirled. The Bolsheviks consolidated power in Moscow, and the Russian Civil War carried on, reshaping daily life with uncertainty. Not all news was political. The world was still recovering from the Spanish influenza pandemic, which had begun the previous year. By 1919, the worst waves had passed, but communities continued to mourn and rebuild, finding comfort in returning routines. And across the Atlantic, in Canada, an extraordinary moment of workers' unity took place, the Winnipeg General Strike. For weeks, thousands of workers filled the streets, calling for fair wages and better conditions. Though tense at times, it was part of a broader conversation about fairness and dignity in the new century. Even as struggles continued, the year was marked by reunions, peace celebrations, and cautious optimism. Lanterns were lit in town squares, parades moved through city streets, and families welcomed loved ones home. The world of 1919 was fragile, but it was also full of promise. Daily life around the world. Beyond the halls of treaties and the echo of politics, life in 1919 unfolded with familiar rhythms. The sound of footsteps on cobbled streets, the smell of bread baking in local bakeries, the gentle rattle of trams and carriages making their way through city avenues. In homes, families returned to simpler joys. Newspapers were folded on kitchen tables, tea was poured, and conversations turned toward the future. Many households had grown used to rationing during the war, so ordinary goods now felt like small luxuries. A bar of chocolate, a tin of cocoa, or even fresh white bread was a delight. Clothing, too, reflected the times. For women, the flapper style had not yet fully arrived, but hemlines were creeping higher and dresses were looser, offering freedom and comfort. Hats remained essential. Cloche hats in cities, broad-brimmed straw hats in the countryside. For men, three-piece suits were still the standard, though younger men embraced softer collars and simpler cuts. In America, one popular new product was the radio crystal set. Small, home-built radios that allowed families to catch signals and hear music or news. Though reception was faint and crackling, the sense of wonder was enormous. Children pressed their ears close, marveling at voices carried through the invisible air. Children in 1919 played with toys that would feel both familiar and quaint today. Tin soldiers, wooden trains and marbles were popular, while in some households, the latest novelty was a teddy bear, still relatively new, but adored. Board games, such as Tiddlywinks or Snakes and Ladders, provided rainy day amusement, while skipping ropes and hoops kept children laughing outdoors. Shopping offered small glimpses of modernity. A stylish woman might browse department store counters for a new compact mirror, a silk scarf, or the latest shade of lipstick. Men might leaf through catalogues for pocket watches, fountain pens, or even an early safety razor. Innovations that promised both convenience and sophistication. Food varied widely by region, but in many cities, ice cream parlors and soda fountains became beloved gathering spots, offering sweet relief from warm afternoons. In Europe, families relished the return of imported goods like coffee and sugar, which had been scarce during wartime. Travel was in transition. Horse-drawn carriages still clattered along some streets, but cars were increasingly common, their engines sputtering with determination. Railways remained the backbone of long-distance travel, while steamships connected continents with journeys that still took days or weeks. Airplanes, once fragile novelties, were beginning to attract attention. Though for most, flying was still a dream rather than a reality. Life in 1919 was a tapestry of resilience and adaptation. People balanced nostalgia for the past with excitement for the future, cherishing small comforts while adjusting to a swiftly changing world. Science, inventions and technology. Science and invention stirred the imagination of 1919. The war had accelerated many technologies, and now these discoveries trickled into civilian life. One of the most remarkable scientific moments of the year was a solar eclipse observed by astronomer Arthur Eddington. His measurements confirmed Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity, showing that starlight bent as it passed near the sun. Newspapers marveled at the notion of space itself being curved, and Einstein's name quickly spread beyond academic circles. In homes, electricity continued its slow spread. More urban households gained access to electric lights, replacing flickering gas lamps. The hum of early refrigerators and electric irons began to appear in middle-class homes, though many still relied on iceboxes and coal stoves. In transportation, automobiles became more affordable. Henry Ford's Model T rolled off assembly lines at prices within reach of working families, changing the rhythm of travel. For those who could afford them, cars brought freedom. Sunday drives through the countryside, headlights glowing softly in the dusk. Aviation also captured imaginations. In 1919, British aviators John Alcock and Arthur Brown made the first non-stop flight across the Atlantic, from Newfoundland to Ireland. Crowds greeted them with amazement, and newspapers described the feat as almost magical. In medicine, progress continued in understanding infections, partly influenced by lessons from the influenza pandemic. Hospitals emphasized cleanliness and sterile practices, while vaccines for diseases like diphtheria and tuberculosis advanced. The year was a bridge between tradition and modernity, where kerosene lamps and telephones coexisted, and where curiosity about the world seemed boundless. Culture and the arts. Culture in 1919 was vibrant, offering joy and escape. In literature, W.B. Yeats won the Nobel Prize for Poetry, recognized for his lyrical works that blended myth and modern life. Novels by writers like H.G. Wells and Edith Wharton captivated readers, while magazines serialized stories for eager audiences. On stage, vaudeville theatres were lively, with comedians, dancers, and musicians delighting audiences. In Europe, opera houses reopened after the war, and ballet flourished, with the Ballet Russes enchanting crowds. Music was everywhere. The Jazz Age was just dawning, with lively rhythms spreading from New Orleans into Chicago and New York. Record players spun songs by artists like Louis Armstrong, while in dance halls, couples swayed to foxtrots and waltzes. In cinema, silent films reigned supreme. Stars like Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, and Douglas Fairbanks lit up screens, their expressions exaggerated to speak without words. Movie palaces, grand with velvet seats and ornate ceilings, became temples of imagination. Sports brought communities together. Baseball was immensely popular in the United States, with Babe Ruth beginning his rise as a legend. Soccer thrived in Europe and South America, while boxing and cycling drew enthusiastic crowds. Art movements also continued to evolve. Modernism was gaining ground, with abstract and experimental work stirring conversations. Architecture, influenced by the Art Deco style, began to show sleek lines and geometric patterns hinting at the decade to come. Media and headlines. In 1919, newspapers remained the heartbeat of information. Delivered each morning, their pages carried stories of treaties, inventions, and curiosities. Headlines were bold, ink smudging fingertips as readers unfolded the day's news. Magazines offered longer reflections, with illustrations and serialized fiction. Posters still decorated city walls, bright, bold, and eye-catching, advertising everything from plays to new products. Telegrams clicked through offices carrying brief, urgent notes. Everyday prices reflected a world in transition. In the United States, a loaf of bread might cost 10 cents, a quart of milk around 15 cents, and postage for a letter 2 cents. In Britain, families carefully budgeted shillings and pence for essentials, with rationing memories still fresh. Some gentle headlines of 1919 might have read, "Nations gather in Paris to chart new peace." First nonstop flight across Atlantic amazes the world. Einstein's ideas confirmed by solar eclipse. New dance craze sweeps American ballrooms. Families rejoice as soldiers return home. League of Nations founded in hopes of lasting peace. Even the smaller notes carried charm, new fashions displayed in department stores, advertisements for soap or biscuits, announcements of local fairs. These were the textures of daily life, woven softly into the rhythm of the year. People born, died this year. Every year welcomes new lives and says farewell to others. In 1919, several figures were born who would shape the century ahead. Among them was Jackie Robinson, who would break barriers in American baseball, Nat King Cole, whose velvet voice would enchant millions, and Pierre Trudeau, future Prime Minister of Canada. Also born were Doris Day, who would bring warmth and song to cinema, and J.D. Salinger, whose pen would later capture the voice of a generation. Meanwhile, the world said goodbye to Theodore Roosevelt, former President of the United States, remembered for his energy and vision. The poet Guillaume Apollinaire, who had helped shape modernist literature, had passed away shortly before in 1918, but his influence lingered strongly in 1919's cultural air. Each name, whether entering or leaving, added threads to the great fabric of history. As the year 1919 came to a close, the world felt like a traveler, standing at a crossroads. Behind lay years of hardship and upheaval, yet ahead shimmered the faint glow of new possibilities. Families celebrated the turn of the year with quiet gatherings, raising glasses of cider or champagne, or simply lighting candles at home. In villages, church bells rang out across frosty fields, while in cities, fireworks illuminated the night sky. Each flicker of light seemed a symbol of hope. The mood was cautious but warm. People longed for stability, for the comfort of ordinary days. They dreamed of a future free from war, with new inventions bringing ease and new art bringing joy. In conversations by firelight or under gas lamps, neighbors spoke softly of better times to come. Looking back now, 1919 feels like the first deep breath of the modern century, a year when the past was laid to rest and the future quietly stirred awake. And so, dear listener, we gently close the chapter of 1919. It was a year of healing, of discovery, of everyday lives stitched together with both sorrow and hope. A year when the world exhaled and when small joys once again became treasures. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. If you found peace in this story, I invite you softly to subscribe so that each new episode may find you again, like a gentle voice at the end of the day. For now, rest easy. Let the memories of 1919 settle into dreams. And when you wake, another year will be waiting just beyond the horizon. Good night.